Every single winter, a calculated phenomenon occurs across global pharmacy aisles. As temperatures drop, desperate consumers quietly funnel over $600 million into a single, highly commercialized illusion: isolated zinc lozenges and synthetic vitamin C tablets. Bounded by sleek plastic packaging and backed by aggressive multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns, these products promise immediate immune defense. But behind the clean laboratory aesthetic lies a disturbing biological reality. You are paying a premium for an isolated chemical skeleton. Synthetic ascorbic acid manufactured in industrial reactors and isolated zinc compounds that science proves can dangerously deplete your body's natural copper levels. While you spend $55 on these sterile, mass-produced bottles, a far more powerful, living biological matrix has been quietly systemized and then suppressed. In the corner of traditional kitchens, a simple $2 jar of living ginger garlic kombucha holds the forgotten secret. Through the ancient alchemy of symbiotic fermentation, nature links these potent botanicals into a bioavailable shield that can actually penetrate the human gut lining. Why did the modern wellness industry erase this living remedy from our collective memory? Stick around, because we are about to dismantle the multi-billion-dollar supplement trap and revive the potent kitchen science they do not want you to replicate. Every year, as the autumn leaves fall and the first winter winds arrive, a psychological shift takes place across the modern world. Millions of people walk into pharmacies driven by a single powerful instinct: the need to protect their health. On the shelves, rows of bright, immaculate bottles await them. Among the most popular items are isolated zinc lozenges and industrial vitamin C tablets. Modern marketing has done its job flawlessly, turning these specific chemical compounds into household symbols of immune defense. The consumer reads the label, sees the high percentages of the recommended daily intake, and experiences a sense of security. They believe that by consuming these clean, laboratory-certified tablets, they are giving their body the exact weapons it needs to fight off seasonal vulnerabilities. This is the seasonal illusion, a deeply ingrained cultural belief that health can be purchased in a concentrated, isolated form, neatly packed inside a plastic bottle. However, this widespread assumption relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology. The wellness market has successfully detached the concept of nutrition from the concept of food. It has convinced the public that an isolated molecule created in an industrial chemical plant functions identically to the complex nutrient networks found in nature. When a person swallows a synthetic vitamin C tablet, they are not consuming the rich, supportive matrix of a living plant. They are consuming isolated ascorbic acid, often derived from genetically modified cornstarch and processed with volatile acids. The body is an evolutionary masterpiece that has spent millions of years learning to recognize whole, complex structures. It does not look at an isolated chemical skeleton and see a familiar friend. Instead, it recognizes an incomplete fragment. Yet the commercial narrative completely ignores this distinction, relying on aggressive advertising and fear-based messaging to ensure that every winter the cash registers keep ringing and the illusion remains unbroken. The financial scale of this illusion is immense, turning temporary, seasonal anxiety into a predictable, multi-million-dollar revenue stream for global corporations. Consumers willingly pay premium prices, sometimes spending upwards of $50 for a single bottle of premium supplements, believing that the high cost correlates with superior efficacy. They look at the sterile laboratory imagery and the endorsements by corporate wellness figures, assuming that modern manufacturing has somehow improved upon nature. The tragedy of this dynamic is not just financial, it is systemic. By placing absolute faith in these isolated, mass-produced interventions, the modern consumer has completely forgotten how to look inward, turning away from their own kitchens and losing touch with the D. To understand the hidden tax of the supplement industry, one must look past the pristine laboratory marketing and look directly at the harsh laws of human biochemistry. When a consumer consumes a high-dose, isolated zinc lozenge, they believe they are delivering a targeted strike against pathogens. But the human body does not operate in isolation. It functions as a delicate, tightly regulated web of mineral balances. In nature, zinc never appears alone. It is always bound within an elegant matrix of copper, iron, and specific organic cofactors that guide its path through the cellular wall. When you flood your digestive system with massive isolated doses of synthetic zinc, you inadvertently trigger a quiet cellular war. The excess zinc completely saturates the shared intestinal transporters, effectively blocking the absorption of copper, an essential trace mineral required for iron metabolism, neurological health, and the formation of white blood cells. Over time, this well-intentioned intervention can lead to a profound, induced copper deficiency, subtly weakening the very immune system the consumer was desperately trying to protect. The situation becomes even more biologically complicated when we examine mass-produced synthetic vitamin C. The industry sells ascorbic acid as if it were identical to the vitamin C found in a fresh, living piece of fruit. It is not. Ascorbic acid is merely the outer chemical shell of a vast, complex biological mechanism. In a living plant, vitamin C is an intricate molecular cooperative consisting of rutin, bioflavonoids, factor K, factor J, and the living enzyme tyrosinase. When the body receives only the isolated chemical wrapper, ascorbic acid manufactured in massive industrial reactors, it must raid its own internal tissue stores to gather the missing cofactors just to process it. If those internal reserves are depleted, the isolated compound cannot be properly utilized. Instead of being absorbed into the deep cellular architecture, the vast majority of these high-dose synthetic vitamins are filtered out by the liver and kidneys, ultimately creating nothing more than expensive, nutrient-dense waste. This is the hidden biological cost of modern convenience. The wellness market capitalizes on the human desire for a quick, effortless fix, selling isolated chemical fractions that strain the body's natural pathways of detoxification. The organs must work overtime to process and eliminate these incomplete, foreign fragments, converting what was promised as a health shield into a metabolic burden. While consumers continue to chase higher percentages and stronger doses on the supplement labels, science quietly reveals a profound truth. The human body does not want a fragmented, lifeless chemical skeleton. It is designed to recognize, absorb, and thrive upon whole, living, and bioavailable structures that can only be found when nature's complex matrix is left completely intact. To discover a genuinely effective biological shield, we must look away from the corporate clean rooms and step into the living ecosystem of a fermentation jar. When raw garlic and ginger are submerged into active kombucha culture, they are not merely sitting in a liquid. They are entering a highly dynamic biochemical refinery. In their raw state, the most potent therapeutic compounds of these plants are safely locked away within rigid cellular walls. Garlic contains alliin and a separate enzyme called allinase, which only interact to create the antimicrobial compound allicin when the plant tissue is physically crushed or damaged. However, allicin is notoriously unstable, degrading rapidly within hours when exposed to air or industrial heat processing. This is why standard shelf-stable supplements struggle to deliver its true therapeutic potential. The symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, known as a SCOBY, completely rewrites this biological limitation. As the microorganisms consume the sugars in the brew, they release a complex cascade of organic acids, primarily acetic and gluconic acids, creating a highly structured, low pH environment. This natural acidity serves as a perfect stabilizer for allicin, locking it into a resilient molecular state that resists degradation. Simultaneously, the live enzymes produced by the yeast and bacteria begin to gently digest the tough cellulose plant walls of both the garlic and the ginger. This process of microscopic breakdown unlocks gingerol and shogal from the ginger matrix, converting them into highly concentrated, free-form states that require zero metabolic effort from the human body to process. But the most remarkable scientific phenomenon occurring inside the jar is the creation of a natural protective biomatrix. The probiotic bacteria weave a dense network of organic compounds that completely envelop the active botanical molecules. When a person consumes this fermented elixir, this living shield protects the fragile compounds as they travel through the harsh, highly destructive acid bath of the human stomach. Unlike synthetic pills that dissolve prematurely or pass through the digestive tract unrecognized, the fermented garlic ginger matrix arrives intact at the small intestine. Here, the specialized gut receptors recognize the organic structure immediately, allowing the stabilized allicin and bioavailable gingerols to absorb deeply into the bloodstream. It is a brilliant display of natural engineering, a highly bioavailable, self-stabilizing, and living shield created entirely through the ancient synergy of microscopic life. Long before the global wellness industry encapsulated human health into synthetic pill bottles, ancient civilizations viewed immunity through an entirely different lens. Across traditional cultures, the winter months were not met with chemical isolation, but with dark, active, and deeply fermented jars. In the historic apothecary traditions of Eastern Europe and Old Asia, wild ferments of garlic and ginger were not considered food trends. They were sacred remedies stored in the center of every home. These traditional practitioners understood intuitively what modern science has only recently verified, that a plant's true protective power is fully unlocked only when it undergoes a living transformation. They did not separate the botanical from its natural environment, nor did they try to extract single molecules in a sterile laboratory. Instead, they relied on natural acidity, wild yeasts, and slow time to cultivate a resilient medicine that grew stronger as it aged. However, this rich line of traditional knowledge experienced a sudden and calculated interruption during the early 20th century. The rapid rise of the modern pharmaceutical model completely restructured the landscape of global healthcare. This newly formed industry established a foundational business rule that changed medicine forever. Nature cannot be patented. A pharmaceutical corporation cannot claim intellectual property rights over a raw clove of garlic, a root of wild ginger, or a naturally occurring symbiotic ferment. To generate predictable, multi-billion-dollar profit margins, the industry had to shift the global collective mindset away from the home kitchen and toward the synthetic factory. Through aggressive legislative lobbying, institutional medical reforms, and sophisticated marketing campaigns, traditional living remedies were systematically pushed to the margins of society. The industrial narrative successfully dazed the public, labeling ancient fermentation techniques as primitive, unsafe, and scientifically unverified. In place of these affordable, self-replicating kitchen elixirs, the market introduced patented, isolated compounds, highly profitable chemical skeletons that could be owned, trademarked, and sold at a premium. The ancient garlic ginger ferments did not disappear because they were ineffective. They were intentionally hidden because they could not be commercialized. By convincing the modern world to rely exclusively on a plastic bottle for survival, the industry achieved its ultimate commercial goal. It successfully turned an abundant, living human right into an expensive, manufactured convenience. To reclaim this stolen biological power, one does not need $1 million laboratory facility. They only need a clean glass jar, basic kitchen tools, and an understanding of intentional biochemical design. The process of creating a living garlic ginger kombucha shield begins with selection. One must choose organic, unblemished raw garlic cloves and fresh fibrous ginger roots. Chemical pesticides or synthetic irradiation, often used in commercial produce, can halt the delicate fermentation process before it even starts. The practitioner carefully thins and crushes the garlic to activate the allanase enzyme, allowing it a few minutes to generate the vital allicin molecules. Next, the ginger is finely sliced to expose the maximum surface area of its cellular matrix. These raw botanicals are then introduced into a mature, actively fermenting batch of plain kombucha tea, which already possesses a low protective pH level and a rich, diverse population of beneficial organic bacteria and yeasts. The jar is tightly sealed to create a strict anaerobic or oxygen-free environment. This lack of oxygen is crucial. It forces the microscopic organisms to shift their metabolic patterns, accelerating the breakdown of plant cellulose while preventing the growth of harmful mold or aerobic pathogens. Over the course of 5 to 7 days at stable room temperature, the liquid transforms, losing its initial sweetness and taking on a sharp, pungent, and highly carbonated character. This is the precise sign that the microscopic refinery has completed its work, stabilizing the volatile medicinal plant structures and encasing them within a bioavailable matrix that is fully ready for human cellular absorption. However, moving from industrial reliance back to traditional kitchen self-reliance requires distinct scientific discipline and caution. Because this fermented elixir is highly concentrated and alive, it must be treated with respect, not consumed carelessly like a commercial beverage. The intense natural acidity that stabilizes the active herbal compounds can strain a sensitive or compromised stomach lining if taken on an empty stomach. Traditional wisdom dictates starting with small amounts, a single tablespoon diluted in warm water, to allow the internal gut microbiome time to adapt to the sudden influx of living enzymes and active compounds. Furthermore, individuals with specific blood conditions or those scheduled for medical surgeries must remember that both garlic and ginger possess natural blood-thinning properties that are significantly amplified through the fermentation process. True health independence is achieved not by replacing industrial pill popping with kitchen carelessness, but by merging the deep, intuitive practices of our ancestors with modern, responsible scientific awareness. The multi-billion-dollar supplement industry thrives on a single powerful commodity, the monetization of human convenience. It has skillfully convinced the modern world that health is something that can only be manufactured in a corporate facility, standardized in a laboratory, and sold back to us in a sterile plastic container. But as we peel back the layers of industrial marketing, the biological and historical truth becomes impossible to ignore. True physical resilience cannot be shortcut through isolated chemical fragments that strain our organs and deplete our internal systems. Instead, it is actively cultivated through patience, symbiotic living structures, and the brilliant, forgotten science that happens right inside a traditional kitchen jar. Turning away from mass-produced convenience is not a step backward into the past. It is a profound reclamation of your biological independence and financial freedom. It is time to question the glossy labels, look past the corporate illusions, and remember the active living remedies that have sustained humanity for thousands of years. If you are ready to dismantle the wellness trap and reclaim the forgotten power of real, ancestral food science, subscribe to the channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Are you still relying on industrial bottles, or are you ready to start your own living kitchen shield?